All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Hello, hello, hello. Come on in, come on in. Sit down, sit down. Are we all caffeined up? We've all had our coffee. Was there any cake outside? I didn't get a chance to go outside and see if there was. Was there cake? There was cake. Tarts. All right. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. I do feel as though I need some sugar, but I'll maybe have an opportunity to do that over lunch. Thank you all for joining us back. Come on in, come on in, come on in. We're going to get into our panel discussion now. Please welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Serkan Ibrahim from Corey Eye. We have Bev Bartlett from Vodafone, Eugene Neal from Love Holidays, and Santosh Kumar again from Roche. Please, if you would join me on stage, round of applause, please, for our guests today. Feel free to sit wherever you so desire. We've got some branding here. We've got the Toby branding's on point today. We've got that's nice. Sit down, sit down, sit down. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you for coming back. Sit yourselves down. Today, at the minute, we're going to talk about AI everywhere. So, since the first time I remember discovering Alexa a while back, 2017, I kind of thought to myself, like, this is the dawn of kind of ambient computing. You know, when we're heading into a world where everything's going to have a voice user interface, everything's going to be an utterance away, and it's kind of getting to that point a little bit. You know, the watches are all connected to the internet, you can talk to them and stuff like that. Somehow it didn't really transpire, or hasn't yet transpired, that anything that you need to get done wherever you are on any device is doable. But I thought in 2017 that kind of like Alexa and Google Assistant and Siri would kind of begin to get organizations into a place where they were developing the ability to engage and interact with a brand via a conversational interface, first and foremost. And I kind of thought, like, if you follow that trend, once you've created a conversational assistant, and you have the kind of like the language model, the conversational patterns, the integrations, everything that you need to make it useful, then it kind of stands to reason that over time, the scope of that assistant will increase in terms of the number of use cases that it covers. And then also the availability of that assistant will increase in terms of the number of channels that it's available in. And so what I wanted to get your thoughts on is, you've all been working in this space for a long time. You've all got real good experience of implementing this technology at scale. The concept of AI assistants being the first port of call across all use cases, across all channels for businesses, and the kind of, not necessarily vision, but the way I kind of see things developing when I see the talks from today, it seems to me as though where we're kind of getting to is AI assistants being the first port of call across all channels, and so that every customer interaction on any channel for any need that they have becomes first and foremost AI mediated. And so, very briefly, do we concur, is that true or false? We'll start there. Is AI, we'll start with you, Eugene, AI-mediated channels as the first port of call for every use case across every channel in time? Is that the direction we're heading in? True or false?
How brief? My answer is yes, basically.
Okay, well, let's just do a very quick pulse check. Yes, brief. Yes.
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 Fully agree. Yes.
Agree? Okay. We might have to share microphones here.
So for triaging, yes, it is the first point of, well, again, we work with multiple customers, so at the first point of contact, yes, but then what happens, what the AI does with it, I think there is a divergence, but broadly, yes.
Okay, so first point of contact, and then depending on the use case, triaging to a live agent or the assistant handling that use case itself.
Yeah, if I can very briefly give an example. So we work with one of the best-known restaurant chains in the world, and they've got over 1,800 stores in the UK, and we're the first point of contact within their outsourced contact center. So we do the first line of triage, and most of the use cases, well, a significant amount of use cases can be consumed by the bot, and the bot will then go through, I know you hate it, resolution, not containment, through to resolution. But actually, there are certain use cases where you have specialist teams, so allergies. And where there is an allergy in any one of the 1,800 stores, they want to make sure that that's actually not going to the contact center agent. They have a specialist desk of people at the head office who are there 24/7 because they have 24/7 stores. And they want it to go specifically to their allergy team so that they can address the concern, speak to the person, and give them the best source of resolution, even if that's calling an ambulance for them. So there are some use cases where I think there is still value in having a person in the loop. And coming
Oh,
from
100%.
the vendor.
100%, yeah, 100% agree. You know, especially the value I see is that in the short term, the more simpler, easier kind of use cases will be the ones that the assistant handles, and then you make space then for the business to be able to serve those other customers with more complex needs and such. Bev, is that kind of, that future something that is done purposefully, as in we have an aim where all of our channels are going to be AI mediated, and that's the plan that we're going to consciously and kind of like from a business point of view, that's what we're aiming for? Or is it more kind of emergent, like, oh, this chatbot's good, maybe it should be in our voice channel, or oh, maybe we could use WhatsApp? Like, is it more purposeful or is it more emergent?
Well, I think given where we are today, it's purposeful. You know, I started 4 or 5 years ago in banking and was just chatting to the Lloyds guys. Chatbots were still a little bit side of desk and, oh, we'll get to it. We're not really worried it's going to change our consumer expectations overnight. That's definitely not where we sit today. And I'm grateful that you guys said you went to Love Holiday on purpose. I went to Vodafone on purpose because Toby was the branded bot that I could see seemed to be emerging and seemed to be well invested in, and absolutely is. Strategically, we want Toby to be the agent synonymous with the brand. So all of the trust stuff that we just spoke about is absolutely critical. The bottom line with AI is don't, like any technology, right? Don't overpromise and underdeliver, because the minute you start to do that, you lose any faith the customer has in what it is you're trying to get them to do. So for us, absolutely, it's, well, what are the right tasks that we put Toby in front of, and which are the ones that we leave alone for a while, and we don't tell our customers that's the way to do it. We do it through our customer service agents. But can it do it? Can he? Yeah. And we have some fantastic, I won't sit here and pitch Vodafone, but we have some fantastic experiences that are enabled through the technologies that underpin Toby. Yeah, they're not all about the NLU and the intent recognition. It's everything else that's in the background. But yeah, we think we can delight, and that's what we all want to do. I'm sure we'll get to it, but the challenge is not, do we all want to delight? Can you do it at the pace that the business needs you to do it, at the pace that your customers need you to do it? And that's the tension point that creates why we're not where you thought we'd be today.
Yeah, interesting. What about you, Santosh? Is it a purposeful aspiration, or is it more emergent at Roche?
No, definitely it's a purposeful, because if you have asked this question maybe a few years back, I think probably the answer would have very binary, like yes or no. But now I think most of the company, they don't have a choice, adopting the AI. I think so it's a necessity, right? And this is where I think, you can create your differentiator in terms of what the product and services you are offering. And that's the only thing we have. So using the AI, I think you can do much more than just automation. I mean, you are collecting the data, you are constantly improving, you are understanding the customer behavior. I think these things only you can do through AI. So I would say every business has to do that.
I think we heard from you, Eugene, and I'd love to get your perspectives in a minute, Serkan. It seems as though Sandy has become purposeful now at Love Holidays.
Yeah, incredibly purposeful, to the point we actually have sandysholidays.com, which we're intending to build out at some point, just as really as a piece of fun. But it's front and center for us. As we build a platform business, we have kind of told our investors and our backers that leading with an amazing application with AI in it, that is our platform business. That's how we win in every single territory. The most unique thing for us as a business is our search engine behind the scenes. We call it the what, not where search. So you can literally tell our search engine what you want to do on a holiday. And that ties up so beautifully to conversational AI. Just tell us what you want. So you can see how it can even take over the very lead of our product. And that's what we're working towards, having in every single area. So it's same challenge, like it's more where we can actually spend resource to meet our kind of expectations. We've got to slow ourselves down, otherwise we'll start doing things badly. So it's very purposeful, but now we have to be also very careful which areas we pick to do next.
Yeah. And Serkan, you speak to a lot of different kind of customers in a lot of different situations. What's your kind of vibe on, generally speaking, from a market perspective, are you noticing that it's a mixture of kind of emergent versus purposeful, like some are kind of coming from a grassroots thing, or would you say that now the market's matured to the point where actually most companies are actually very purposeful and driven in terms of getting results and scaling this stuff?
I'm seeing a two-speed market. I'm seeing, and I think it depends on where you're starting from an architectural standpoint and your accessibility to your back-end systems, because a lot of people have been talking about hyper-personalization over the last couple of days and channel of choice for the customer. But ultimately, we heard, I think Beatrix said it perfectly, about network accessibility and being able to get your stakeholders aligned. And there is going to be inherently a level of complexity there. So for some organizations, it is going to be purposeful. It is going to be front and center of everything that they do. And it is going to be a change agent for their organization. No pun intended. But I mean, conversational AI is going to give the ability to integrate with your 15 most commonly used applications. The days of your agents having 5 screens and then just tabbing through them, furiously trying to find the right information, are going to be of the past. And you can see applications where hyper-personalization from a bot will exceed that which can be delivered by a human agent. And we're seeing that inflection point with some of our customers and prospects today, with that ambition. But then there are inhibitors, and the challenges are not commercial, they're not technological. Technology can do it, it's operational. And it's how you deal with those operational challenges that will really fundamentally impact whether your project is a success or not.
Interesting. For those of you tuning in online, feel free to stick some questions here in the comments or in the questions in the Q&A, and we will get to those. And we'll turn it over to the people in the room for some questions shortly. But we've kind of alluded to some challenges so far. Mostly, I think, Bev, you were saying there that a lot of the challenges around how do you pace the kind of releases of new use cases. I wonder if you can share a little bit more about, you know, some of those challenges that you face, because you're operating at a different sort of level from the point of view of Tobii Everywhere. You're working with lots of different markets. They're probably all at different stages of maturity. They're all learning different things. I know Turkey's having some fantastic success with a whole bunch of different use cases. So what are the kind of common challenges that you see kind of from your perspective in scaling this stuff?
I mean, I think it absolutely starts with this: don't make the mistake of going too fast, too early, because you have to come back from it. So in the 14 markets that we've got operating, we've had that experience where we've seen some great containment, even matched with TMPS, which is also questionable depending on sample size. It looked good for a bit, and then qualitative research told us that's not the reality. So we know you have to come back, and you have to, you know, journeys have to be released with an appropriate experience metric to know that you can go to the next one and the next one. There is then the challenge of where do you stop, because we all want this wow experience and for everybody be talking about our bot. But there's also a limit at which, if it's viable for the business and it's enough for the customer, there's error rates in every element of service, right? I mean, I had two dreadful experiences on web and with humans just last night. So it's what's your tolerance level for that? We'll do that story over coffee, honestly. So there's those challenges, don't go too fast. Turkey, unbelievable, their engagement rates. So they've decided to drive adoption of Tobii through gamification. Not necessarily culturally that would work in all of our markets, but it's working super well for them, which means they can also sell through Tobii. So back to that view of trust, we've established great customer experience. He only serves the journeys he's integrated in. So 98% of his journeys are integrated. And people come and just play games. So they're driving up adoption in the same way as the digital guys would have done with apps a few years ago. So there's a whole plethora across the markets, and we are super fortunate. I mean, you know, I'm grateful to be, in terms of this domain, working in an organisation where I can see pretty much, you know, where it's not working, which is also true, and where we see some great success, and that's how we share with the markets to go faster.
Eugene, from your perspective, I think you alluded to some similar challenges to Bev there in terms of like, what is the pace in which you should tackle which type of use cases? Some of that may be dependent on kind of API availability and things like that, but how do you kind of assess what to do next and how to plan your roadmap from that respect?
We have to be mindful of two things. So we kind of have a slightly different nature in our two businesses, that we kind of have these two big seasons. We have a big selling season at the start of the year and a big travel season in the middle of the year. So we kind of have to be mindful of what the biggest customer demand will be in the next coming months. So we try and focus in on that. But we also, we were talking about this just before, we're not the most scientific of groups. So we do look at a lot of data, but we kind of look for conversations where we just have a feeling that we've built roughly the right intent, and it's just not getting that traction because of the language piece. The language is a real art piece. And we just we pick 3 every couple of weeks and just actually kind of have fun with the language on them and try and tune them in and get the traction up where we know we actually can, the APIs do work, everything is there. But keeping that continuous focus and going back and making sure the resolution rate on each intent is actually at the highest we can push it with language. So it's kind of, we do some strategic stuff, but then also we do just keep reviewing everything we've got, because that continuous, we made a joke that sort of Sandy should be called actually Juliana, because one of our team just spends this entire time reviewing every single thing that we've got in there. And that's, you've got to have the two together. So a bit of strategy, but also a lot of care and attention for what you actually have.
I also think that Sandy needs to have an avatar which is Clippy 3.0, which is basically just a flip-flop with eyes. Santosh, you alluded to some challenges a little bit earlier on when we were speaking, which was around the data requirements to kind of get this stuff off the ground. I wonder if you could share some of the challenges that you kind of faced at Roche and how you overcome them, and then Serkan, I'd love to get your perspectives on, generally speaking, the biggest challenges that you're kind of seeing from the market.
So definitely, I think the data is the key here, right? Or data. I mean, when we started the journey, when most of the we are getting like, okay, you can just give us any kind of data, we will transform those data, and we can train the bot. But that is not true. I have seen that, right? So in our world, in our healthcare domain, we have a variety of data in a different format. We have a PDF, we have some other data lying around on a structured way. We have even in a data we have in a non-basically the digital way, right? So how we can bring all those data and make sure that those data can be transformed and it can be used for this kind of AI learning, right? And that's one of the challenges we have. So definitely, I think that's where the limitation comes, because in AI, you can only build based on certain pattern. And you have to basically, find these patterns from the data, right? And we have to build the, various scenarios, because you can't really bring all the data into the one format. I think that's where the complexity is. Either you can change the data pattern or data model entirely at the organizational level. I think, to kind of harmonize everything, like how the data is being generated, that's good. But I think it's impossible to do that in most of the organization. Yeah, so I think the data is the key here. I think once you find that, how we can, transform any kind of data into, where the machine can learn and can be used, I think that's where the key point here.
It seems, I mean, Bev, you alluded to it earlier on, which is, to make this stuff work, it seems as though, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that if you're relatively sort of like new into the space, that it's all about language models and understanding what people say and producing responses to those requests. But I think what's really important to consider, which is kind of what we're getting into, is everything else that's required to stand this stuff up properly. It's not simply about language model creation, it's around data, it's around system integrations, it's around organization support, it's around telephony integrations and how do you report this and all that kind of stuff. So wondering whether you can share, Serkan, from kind of, all the clients that you have and your observations on the market, like, do you concur with those challenges, or is there anything else that you've observed that are some either barriers that people in here may need to overcome, or any other sort of like challenges that you've observed from your
So I completely concur with everything that the panel has said. Particularly what Eugene said about conversational design being an art. It absolutely is an art, it's not a science. But from a conversational AI perspective, the science is then how you integrate with your channels and with your back-end applications. So that's where the science comes in. I think the biggest challenge is managing those multidisciplinary teams where you have the science and the art fused together, because that's always something that is quite challenging in every walk of life. But ultimately, how you're enabling the bot in the first instance, in the first stages as well, just getting that off the ground seems to be a tremendously challenging prospect for a lot of organizations, because there's a lot to do. There's stakeholder engagement, there's alignment within your internal teams. It's, do we bring in new resources to do this, or do we try and look for the competencies that exist within our existing team? And principally, one of the things as a vendor in this space that we're doing is trying to create tools and templates to help organizations navigate that. These are the skills that you need for a conversational designer, but actually, this is where you'll need an enterprise architect, and this is where you'll need someone who has, albeit low code, some ability to connect with some of these systems. But increasingly, I think that the technology is doing some of that heavy lifting. And I think everyone on the panel's been in this sector for sort of 4 or 5 years at least. And I think you've probably all seen a tremendous shift and change. I've been in this industry for a similar amount of time, and it used to literally take months and months to get this information, upload it, and now you can think of sort of LLM scrutinizing knowledge-based articles for training data and then repurposing that. The ability to execute this faster and more efficiently is certainly here, it's on the horizon, but the challenges are the same nonetheless, in my view.
Can I come in?
Of course you can.
Because the one thing that strikes me that hasn't necessarily changed yet, but will, I think LLMs will change it, is how do we build the experiences that the customer wants, incorporating AI across our other experiences, right? Because AI, certainly when I started it some years ago, app and web were prevalent and had also overpromised and underdelivered in some cases. And I think that internally in organizations that exists, that, you know, app is dominant, web is secondary, where does AI fit, where do chatbots fit? And then obviously when you enter the voice domain, you're up against it again because you're up against teams who may have, and I don't mean up against in a way other than we're all proud of the work that we do and why shouldn't we be? But our customers don't give a monkeys. They want to access the organization and they want to do it in whatever way happens to get them their resolution the quickest, the nicest, with the wow effect. That's the bit we still haven't cracked. And I think that what LLMs and GPT might let us do is crack it, because now everybody's talking about it. So it can't be a third wheel of a digital stream of work. It's front and center. And what do we do? So.
Interesting. I'll open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions in the audience right now. Yeah, Razvan?
One key customer experience is also consistency. So I would be very willing to hear your thoughts about how managing non-regression, how managing maintainability. You put something in production. I guess if you don't do anything in the last year, in the next year, it will probably become irrelevant. You update language models eventually. You update versions of different components. How to really maintain at least a constant, good, a consistent experience in time.
We're down one mic. How do you maintain a consistent experience over time? We're kind of getting into AI kind of operations here and DevOps. Do you want to have a stab at that one, Eugene? Yeah. I think it's working.
We're on. I'm not going to say we're perfect, but we kind of do a couple of things. So we monitor conversations for a conversational anomaly. So every single conversation we have goes through an anomaly detection platform. So we look for pattern shift in conversation. So if we start to put a bad conversation out there, we'll start to get a fairly standard use of weird phrases from us. But equally, if the customer changes their conversational response to us, we start to see that change in pattern and we alert very quickly on that and respond, which helps us maintain the health of that conversation, also helps us have a relevant conversation at the right time. But that's not anything new. That's kind of using the sort of SRE discipline of everything must be observable and then we must alert off the back of it at certain thresholds. So we haven't invented anything new there. And in terms of looking at just the basic sort of quality and conversion of intents to resolution, we keep an eye on the percentage resolution of every single one of our intents all the time. So should they start to drift, it's telling us something's wrong. Maybe the context is changing. Maybe our language needs tuning up. So you have to be attentive, but we don't need to invent new ways of doing it. The kind of DevOps world brought us many of the tools we actually need, but we can apply them to conversational AI.
Any other thoughts from the panel in terms of best practice for operational processes?
Right. So I think definitely the feedback mechanism. I think this loop is very important. Getting the constant feedback from the user about whatever they are doing the conversation is about, right? And based on that, you have to act upon, right? It's also very important in the back end how you are going to manage it, right? And how fast you are doing that, right? Because the customer is always asking the question, and maybe if they are not getting the proper response or the accuracy of the response is not accurate, then definitely you will have a you see the users are leaving the bot. Basically, they're not going to use it for the next time, right? So in my use case, what exactly we have done is, because we are more in a healthcare, and the data which we are processing is more basically a regulatory aspect, compliance, right? So we have to be 99% accurate. So we have no room for saying that even we can have a 5% of data margin or error margin, and that's where we have to play. So yes, it's a kind of resource incentive for us, because we have to make sure that all the question or response are 100% accurate, because someone's lives depend on that in healthcare, right? Maybe someone take the wrong medication, or maybe someone do the wrong testing, in a lab. So yeah, exactly. I mean, those are challenges. So feedback mechanism, very important, I think, and this is where I think we have to be, in the backend side, the content creator, make sure we have enough resource for the SMEs, the subject matter expert, who are monitoring those things and making sure they are accurate, validated, and all that. So,
did we have another question, Ben? Was there another one? I'll just quickly say, while we wait for another question, if you have another, there's one down here. From a tooling perspective, what we're getting into here in terms of like AI operations and stuff like that, having the DevOps processes in place is well and good, but you need the tools to support you and able to do that. So every time you make a change to your language model, you're doing regression testing, there's flow testing, there's a whole bunch of different tools out there. I wonder whether, before we get to Christoph's question, whether you have any thoughts from a tooling perspective in terms of what are the key things that you need to do to optimize this stuff over time?
Absolutely, the testing is key, and sort of, especially for organizations that have peaks in terms of seasonality, being able to do that testing at scale as well, to be able to ensure that the fidelity of the bot. Again, making sure that your integration frameworks are robust enough. We're lucky enough to have a platform that allows us to do the API connectivity, but also connect us with RPA. But there are considerations to that. Where you don't have easily accessible APIs, you want to make sure that you have the ability to do that without adding too much conversational latency. And then also just making sure that there is that network of partners, because you're going to be working across an ecosystem of different systems. But from a tooling perspective, it's making sure that you've got the ability to tune your NLU module, your models, being able to test at scale, and also being able to use data to inform better business decisioning. The one thing that strikes me about a lot of existing customers, and I'd say this genuinely, I think only 10%, so data is a massive byproduct of your bots. So your bots can aggregate massive amounts of data in a way that you weren't necessarily tracking before, but I'd say only about 10% of the customers that I've worked with are using it to inform better business decisioning and looping that back in a continual improvement, continual development cycle to actually make new business decisions, not just to improve the fidelity of the bot. And I think that is something that a lot of organizations can get a lot more value from, but that also needs really senior level buy-in to say, actually, let's change the way that we do business based on the data, the larger data sets that are being created as a byproduct of the bot.
Absolutely. Time for one very quick question, Christoph.
So, first of all, thank you for a great panel. There was one point which I really loved from all of you, which was the deep respect between technology and design. I loved the discussion about, like conversation design being an art, because in the end, it's a different design. It's not web design. It's based on it's about language, and it needs deep experts in language. And like a recent experience I had, when we looked at these large language models, and I had people with a linguistic background from my team, for example, looking at it, they were not so impressed. But they really know how they have to tweak it to get the best out of it. I just was interested, what do you do in your companies to foster that respect between technology and design?
We'll need to keep it very brief because we are on time, Bev. Yeah.
I guess I'm going to echo that. When I came into Vodafone, so obviously we've got 14 markets, and the discipline of conversation design as an art, as a respected new skill, was different across all of them, I would say. So very mature in some, and in others it was a case of some developers being given a bit of access to an agent to create some conversations. So, and we've definitely come a long way, and I think the next stage is going to be even more interesting, right? And in fact, it's the top of my mind right now. How do we go from conversation designers to prompt engineers, and what's the right overlap of those skills to get the best out of where we're going next? And I also think that for us, there's still the challenge of where are the people to develop into those roles? What's the right base skill if we're going to bring them in from scratch out of universities and things like that? I think there's a broader set of people out there now to recruit from, but we still struggle. When we're looking at those roles, we don't find those as easily accessible roles.
Very good, very good, very good. I'm afraid we are out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please a round of applause for our panel today.